You need a victory.
I just had to point it out.
All right, good evening. Welcome to our work session. It is 5:30 and we'll go ahead and get started because I know Gerald has a good agenda for us tonight. So but we have just a couple things to get through before you and all yours, Gerald. Can we do a roll call, please? Councilor Source,
Present.
Councilor Rickman here, Councilor Blair,
Here.
Mayor Forster here, Councilor Martin Lewis here. Counselor Morton here, Counselor Laporte here. All right, thank you. And first up tonight, we have SEDCOR here, give us something on the enterprise zone.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a quick little intro, while you guys come up. SEDCOR's here, they're our enterprise zone manager, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that. But just kind of set the stage real quick. The enterprise zone it's an existing program, it's actually a federal program implemented at the state level, throughout the state. And we've had an enterprise zone for quite a while, I think 20+ years, since longer than I've been here. It's a 3 to 5 year property tax exemption for trade sector industry, and we'll talk more about that. But really, it's one of the few tools that we have to try to incentivize either recruitment or an expansion of industry. So, people always kind of talk about cities and incentives and things like that. And really, there's very few tools that we actually do have, and this is one of the few tools. For better or worse, if there's a large industrial recruitment, it's kind of like anticipated. Usually, those businesses kind of expect to be able to access an enterprise zone wherever they're looking. So it's great to have that available. And a great example is Medallion Cabinetry, which is now Cabinet Works. That was actually an enterprise zone project that helped bring them to community. I think that was 2000 is when that came. They're still here, employing a lot of people. But SEDCOR's here tonight, partly just to kind of bring you back up to speed on enterprise zones, but mostly because the legislature has made a couple of changes to the enterprise zone program. And to basically come sort of back into compliance with that, we need to take some action. So I'm gonna let SEDCOR take it away. We've got Eric Anderson, who's the president, and Alex Barros, who is our regional guy. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, thank you very much for having us tonight. I'm Eric Anderson with SEDCOR, president of SEDCOR. Yeah, I'm Alex Barros, I think everybody for the record. For those of you not familiar with SEDCOR, we're a regional economic development organization. We've been around since 1982. We cover Marion, Polk, and Yandell counties, and we have a rather lengthy mission of leveraging public-private partnerships to successfully grow, retain, and attract high-value jobs and capital investment focused on traded sector companies. But really, we're here to try to help grow our economies and grow great jobs and investment in the region. Oh, sorry. Can you advance? No. There we go. Thank you. Usually when we're having these conversations, this is sort of why economic development, why communities should be proactive around economic development. And it's that part of it's job retention and job creation in the community. Part of it's diversifying your economy. And a couple of companies that have moved out recently. So how do we try to diversify the economy and bring new folks in to take those positions? Obviously, those provide revenues to the community as well, which goes towards improved quality of life and bringing in investment from outside the region. We put those specific pictures on there. It's an early picture of the streetscape and Independence is one of them, but we want people to recognize that it's not just bringing in jobs for the sake of jobs, but it's investing in a community that allows for resources to come in to pay for streetscape improvements, to pay for libraries, to pay for public parks. As Sean mentioned, the Enterprise Zone program is really sort of a flagship program of the state of Oregon. One of the things we pretty much consistently correct the state of Oregon is that while it's a state program, it is local resources that are put on the table for it. So that's why it's an important one for communities to be engaged in. It is a mechanism to primarily incentivize new business investments. And it's a basically a 3-year property tax abatement for new business coming in and creating jobs, or an existing business investing in the community. The zones can be sponsored by cities, by ports, by counties, by tribal government. It is our signature resource that we have as an incentive for businesses that are coming in. In the case of this one specifically, it's a little more complicated because the sponsor of the enterprise zone is actually plural, sponsors with the cities of Monmouth, Independence, and Dallas, and Polk County being the sponsors. There are 73 zones around the state, and 55 of them are rural, like this one, and 18 urban. This is a map that shows the existing enterprise zone here for the Monmouth, Independence, and Dallas zone.
Just to say that when it's an abatement on the property tax, it's on the differential. So it's not just like you give away, it's just 3-year abatement where we'll talk about extended zone, but it's on the differential. So on the increase that would otherwise hit the rolls immediately, there's just like a 3-year delay. So just important to note that
So they're still paying property tax, they're just not getting that 3% increase.
they're not getting the increase on whatever they're making the investment on top of that.
So in the case if somebody moves into the Marquis Spa building, for example, that building will still be on the tax records if it's an eligible project that goes in for the enterprise zone. Any improvements, the incremental investment in improving that facility, or if they bring in equipment, that would be subject to the property tax abatement. But the building would still, as it is now, that would stay as the assessed value. Yeah,
Thank you.
good question. Yes. So, we always talk about trade sector, and these are businesses that bring in money from outside the region. Basically manufacturers is what we talk about. Those are eligible for the enterprise zone. Processors, shippers, call centers, headquarters facilities, in the case of some zones, hotels and motels and resorts as well. This zone has agreed to offer that to that one. So that's not all the zones include those. What it isn't for is retail, construction, financial, or other activities. More recently, we've run into with warehouse and distribution facilities like Home Depot. If it's a Home Depot that comes in, or an Amazon facility that serves other facilities, that's an eligible project. But the Amazon or Home Depot facilities that send goods out to an individual home, if you buy a refrigerator from Home Depot, that facility is not eligible. It's basically a retail transaction. So they have gotten a little more specific in eligibility around that. So that's what they call the local fulfillment facilities. So those are eligible. This is where I wish I brought my glasses. For the standard enterprise zone, like we were talking, thank you. We look for an investment of a minimum of $50,000 in new real property. We said it's new property being invested, which includes new construction, new additions to an existing facility, or heavy and fixed machinery and equipment. So if you're installing something that's going to be affixed into that facility. There's also personal property that can be $50,000 minimum that can be brought in as well. And for some projects, there's some degree of flexibility there, but generally it's $50,000 threshold. For the project to be eligible, if it's a new business coming in, they just have to create one job. And if it's a business that's already in Oregon, we have to show a net increase of at least 10%. And if it's a business that's already here, it's in idea it's a 10% increase. So somebody has 10 employees, they just have to come up with one new job. But if it's a 100-employee company, they have to come up with 10 new jobs. What they want to do with this program is be sure that we're not using enterprise zone just to move businesses and jobs from one place to another. So that's the 30-mile zone boundary there that we look at as far as businesses coming in and taking advantage of the enterprise zone resource. They have to maintain that number of employees throughout the 3 years, and one piece of paperwork is enter into a first source hiring agreement with WorkSource Oregon, and this basically gets those new positions listed with the state employment department. Now, there's something called the extended abatement. We've been talking about the basic 3-year enterprise zone program. Once that is offered, if a company comes in, is eligible, applies at the right time, they will receive the 3-year benefit. They can, in some cases, ask for 4 or 5 years. If that is the case, there's additional criteria for that. On any of those kinds of projects, we haven't had one to date, or else you would have already heard about it, because they have to come through to the sponsor organization, in this case, the City of Independence, to hear about that project and approve it yourselves. Also, generally, those jobs have to be paying 150% of the median household income. That puts it around $78,000 right now on average. For a business to be eligible for the 4 to 5 years. So before we would even bring a business to you, we'd have to be sure that they meet all the criteria we talked about, as well as their average salaries have to be at 150% threshold.
It's a good question, before we get too far down the road. Can you give me an example of a Centaur success here in Independence?
We have not had a lot of activity with the enterprise zone here. The most recent one we've had in Polk County has been the Centec. Dallas, the Centec in Dallas, which went into the old Tyco building.
Right, for the property.
So that was a case where existing building, so but they made improvements to it and bought a lot of equipment. So it was the improvements to the building and equipment that got brought in.
Can you, and maybe this is a question for you, Mr. Irvine, can you explain to me how you work with them on economic development, how they work with you, how the process works?
Yeah, sure. So they're sort of a regional, being a regional organization, they tend to focus on, they get a lot of the recruitment leads. So that's kind of where I interact with them a lot, is on recruitment leads and responding to leads. Because we can, in some ways it's easier for them to respond in terms of packaging workforce information, demographics, a lot of the kind of the response information. But they're here tonight because they're actually the zone manager for the enterprise zone. In previous years, different city staff from different communities had been zone administrators. I think it was a year or two ago, we all kind of got together and said, you know what, this really makes more sense in the home of the regional organization that represents that region. And so Centaur became the manager for that. And so in the context of enterprise zones, this is really kind of our main interaction with Centaur in the context of enterprise zones, because previously it was sort of each city for itself, or whoever happened to be the manager at the time.
And I think it's helpful where the clarification there is on trade sector. So we wouldn't necessarily see your involvement in like a downtown business, because it's not, so it's largely gonna be industrial lands in kind of specific areas, not necessarily a small main street on business.
And with a couple really key industrial sites now in Independence, we want to be sure that we have all of our kind of act together when it comes to the resources that are available as we market those buildings.
And one other thing I'll jump in about that also is, so with the recruitment, even if somebody was to, approach me directly and say, hey, I want to move into town, I've got this industry, I would still loop them in, because they are really tied in with the regional supply chain and other businesses in the region, because that's usually the competitive factor with a recruitment is, oh, well, you're looking to supply wood. Well, we've got these existing manufacturers in the region that supply that type of wood, or, we need a regional workforce, they can help figure out the regional workforce, or I need, 5 other employers like me in the region, because either I want to poach workers from them, or they're gonna help supply me what I need. So that's where Centaur really comes in handy, is with that regional supply chain.
And we also track of what all the other incentives that might be available depending on the business. So in the case of an existing building particularly, we would bring in the Energy Trust of Oregon to be sure that they looked at what resources they had to make it, to make the building more energy efficient, or if there's investments that could be made that, those are resources available to anybody, but if it's a business coming in and investing, that ends up being an incentive for them to come. It's a department, if it's a food processor, Department of Agriculture has some programs, so it's one of the, we talked about dot connecting in the beginning, it's really one of our roles to identify what the menu of options would be, and also to try to make it easy on that business by bringing all those folks to the table at one time, getting to meet the company, having them say, here's our project, here's our story, and then we'll kind of give our individual, here's what we can do. Then we basically, ensure that everybody kind of follows through.
So let's go back to.
I have two questions. So the first question is, are we gonna get into your funding tonight and how you're funded, or I would love to know how you're funded, and are there any conflicts of interest or any member of council that is part of your group?
Well, Mayor Schwartzer has been on a board of directors of Sedcor, and, it didn't continues to be on their board. The former chair of Sedcor, that predates you as mayor, I believe. Yeah. I mean, that's been our connection.
And your primary funding source?
We are funded by a variety of resources. We have contracts for service from a variety of communities, counties and cities. We get funding to do specific projects like our Regional Innovation Hub and the Latino Enterprise Development Program. We have funding from membership, we have funding from events. So we have about $1 million budget and probably 9 or 10 different contracts that is part of it. So we were talking about the extended abatement of 4 and 5 years. In the 2023 legislative session, the Oregon decided to add an additional requirement for that, the 4 to 5 year abatement. That if a zone wants to offer the 4 to 5 years, it must establish what they call a school support fee. Which is defined in the legislation as anything between 15 to 30% of the annual property tax savings that company gets. Because of the multiple zone sponsors that I talked about earlier, we have to go not only negotiate that school support fee with the 2 affected school districts, but then also get the 4 zone sponsors, cities and counties, who also agreed to that school support fee. And thus far, both Central and Dallas school districts have set the fee at 15%. That's been the standard around the state. Once again, that's something that we're looking, if we go to the next slide, as we're here tonight to talk about is we need the council to agree to that 15% fee. And also, just as a reminder, what I said earlier, any specific project that would come with the 4 to 5 year abatement request would be coming to you separately in the future. So we would bring that before you. So this is not approving any specific project or any specific award. This is just allowing us to be able to offer that in the future. We still have the ability to review each of those on a case by case basis. Anything else we should? Happy to answer other questions.
Mayor, thank you for your presentation. How is that new fee, how has that impacted your ability to recruit folks into these enterprise zones? Does it become a barrier that there's an additional fee that plus the additional bureaucracy you have to navigate through? Does that make it harder to use?
You may have answered the question yourself.
Because I'm looking for a yes.
Yes, no, it's one more thing to explain. It's one more, I mean, right now it's a hurdle. It's because it's tied to the 4 to 5 year. Business isn't really going to see an issue. So once a business comes along, they still have, the additional requirement of coming before the council for you folks to approve it. So they're not going to be privy to having to go to the school district and to all of them once we have that ability to offer it. So from that perspective, the new business or the existing business is expanding. They're not going to see it. It's more been kind of a bureaucratic challenge for us, particularly as we realize that this program is generally conceived to in the model of, hey, we're Portland and we have Portland Public Schools, so we have one city and one school district. So when I went to them and said to the state and said, so we have 4 cities and 2 school districts, how do we do these individually by community? Oh no, they all have to agree to it. So that part is, we've been feeling the brunt of the bureaucracy on it.
I guess I have one more, just a clarifying question. It's pretty common for elected officials throughout the region to serve on a board like yours, right? That's not unique to our mayor. I looked up your board real quick, it looks like you have Mayor Kaiser, you got Polk County Commissioners.
Sarah Salem, there's,
Mayor Salem.
yeah, just, I think all two of the three counties are commissioners represented on the board as well, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We do want to have the majority being private sector business shirts on.
Thank you.
Can you explain that 15% fee from the schools to me, just break that down, what that means, because I don't actually understand what.
It's a, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not fully expert, but it's, the legislature deemed that the business has to pay 15% of of like their abatement as a fee, well, whatever the rate's at, 15 to 30%.
To the school?
To the school district.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's what, in 2023, HB 2009, requires the districts to set the fee, and then that fee needs to essentially get blessed by the zone sponsors, which would be fine if it was, one sponsor, but there are 4 sponsors, and so that's why we're doing this.
Then I have one more quick one. So how do we, as the city of Independence, get the cream of the crop from you guys? Like you have a bigger area, and how do you situate, like when you're recruiting companies coming in, like, this person would be great, or this company would be great for Dallas, or better for Independence, like how do we fight for ourselves to get the best?
I mean, I think generally what we work with communities is to be sure that you've got, we understand what the sites are that are here, what the buildings are that are here. We have the, good information on them. Are they ready to go? Or, are there any surprises for an investor that comes along? Because a lot of this is about certainty in the process to attract investment. What we would generally do is when we have a lead that comes to us, we listen to the customer, what are their requirements? And in some cases, a lot of like warehouse and distribution, they really want to be near I-5 interchange, and so that generally narrows the focus for us. If they don't need that, if they, if they're looking for certain type of workforce, if they're looking for a certain type of facility, we just really try to find the place that makes the most sense to them. Ideally for us, there's 2 or 3 options to get their attention to come into the region and say, okay, we can show you 3 different facilities or 3 different buildings in 1 or 2 or 3 communities, and get them to have a feel, meet the local economic development leadership if that's what they want. Get to know what other businesses are in the community, if there's supply chain opportunities there. That's really, we try to be responsive, but at the same time, if someone comes to us, take a step back. When the state gets a lead that says they're interested in Portland, my theory is always when the farther they're away from Oregon, the more likely Portland equates to Oregon and their, meaning. So it was always important for us to be sure that the state said, do you need to be in Portland? Do you need, or we look to other areas? And we're kind of the same way. If someone says, oh, we're looking at Salem, it's like, do you need to be in Salem? Well, let's talk about where, so, and all of our communities have some positives and some negatives. Right now, we have some real challenges with available buildings and sites, particularly greenfield sites throughout the region. So, that's something that we're, trying to look at more. For the last 20 years, we've had Mill Creek in Salem, which, is 200 acre, 600 acres of pretty much ready to go industrial land, and that's full now, or spoken for. So, and that's why we work with Sean in the city on trying to identify other greenfield sites here, for example, because that'll put Independence up much higher on the list for a community. That's a community that actually has that available in the region.
Just a quick clarification, right, with the 5-year plan, they can do years 1 through 3, and then decide that they don't wanna do 4 and 5, right?
Yeah.
It's not they don't have to commit to the whole 5-year program.
Yeah, it's totally, I mean, in some cases, we may advise them, it's probably not the kind of project that the city wants, so, or it might be a kind of project that they have a fast enough time period, and just say, okay, we're just gonna go through the 3-year, go through that process.
Which is the paperwork process rather than a public process.
Mayor, did you say that Suncor offers training as well to local businesses, or did I mishear you?
I'm sorry, could you repeat
Do
that?
you offer training? I couldn't, maybe I
We
misheard.
don't personally offer training, but we do the same way we package what the resources that are out there. So if a company, you know, we're talking to a company now that, you know, if they move in here, they'll need some specialized skills. We would bring them together with the local school district, about CTE programs. We talked to them about, you know, Shenectady has a program that's applicable to what their training needs are.
Working manufacturing extension partnership.
Do these businesses pay you for these services?
No.
No.
I mean, Shenectady Community College is a member of our organization, so, and we do pay for that.
Okay. Are there any businesses here locally that are members of yours?
Yes, there are. I don't know, like, we have about 315 businesses, so I don't know if somebody's lapsed or whatnot, but most of the manufacturers in this area are members.
They are. Is there a way to get a copy of that list?
It's probably online.
Yeah, I think it's a AOA membership.
Yeah,
directory
yeah,
online.
That I've gone on farm tour before that you've all been part of, there's farmers.
Yeah.
That are part of that coalition, that's it, we're kind of like to identify how they're dealing with modern day, you know, government regulatory issues, all this other things, so it's very
So I think, like I said, work session, good opportunity for questions. This will end up coming back to council as resolution, I think. I don't think we've got a date set, but
I don't think we.
I don't think we got a date set for that, but it'll be sometime in the relatively near future. So you get another crack at it, we'll be asking for a decision. So if you end up with any other questions, after this meeting, feel free to ping us and we can, try to get those answered.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Grant updates.
Yeah, so then next here, and just, you guys had asked for, kind of a more regular, I think we said every 6 months, update on where things were with grants. And so that's about where we are now, so I got I believe they've already did that great upgrade. So we got the updated list. This is essentially everything that was on the list the last time you all saw it. Updated to include any new additions, and a few status updates of projects that were ongoing. You see, we're already kind of working on some stuff in 2026. We actually got submitted the build grant today. That's actually a really big ask, federal transportation ask. We're asking for $9 million to essentially finish funding for Chestnut Street Bridge and then full build out of 13th Street. So we can connect Chestnut Street Bridge up to the existing road network. That would be a great one with a lot of work. Good on Marshall for getting that together, and also, you know, tap Gerald for a lot of and our engineers for a lot of stuff. The other big one that we put in this year is the Housing Infrastructure Finance Program. That would be water and sewer infrastructure to help fund for Gun Club Road, to fund a Polk CDC development off of Gun Club Road there. We're hoping to find out about that in the next month or two. The build grant, I imagine, the feds will always take quite a while, so I don't expect to hear anything about that till summertime, maybe even fall. In terms of other sort of ongoing requests, we're still waiting to hear from the rural. So part of the reason I'm not expecting to hear about build grant soon is we're still waiting on the rural and tribal grant to be notified. We were originally supposed to be notified about that in, I think, September. So we're kind of delayed there. But that's still ongoing. You'll see there's a bunch of others I think we're already ongoing in the previous the previous list. And then you know, grants awarded, brand new to news as of today. We actually received we're notified today that we got a Travel Oregon Recreation Ready grant. This is a technical assistance program that they've created to help develop new outdoor recreation destinations. And what we pitched at them was support for basically developing high quality paddler access in Riverview Park. This is it's a great program actually, because it's technical assistance for the very early stage. Essentially, this is, you know, they said we're looking for projects that have been ideas for a long time, but have never quite managed to get momentum towards actually, sort of usability and seeing how it works. And this idea of paddle access in the park has been, kind of kicked around for quite a long time, so. This is gonna help us look at essentially the entire Riverview Park area and identify where would make the best sense for good quality paddle access. ADA accessibility is also a priority of this program, and as you can imagine, ADA accessibility to access the river there where the bank is really steep and the river goes up and down a lot. That was really one of the main challenges preventing us from progressing with our particular design. So that'll carry us through some initial feasibility and design considerations. Assuming that we find, kind of a satisfactory path, then it actually opens up, there's the possibility that we can get $100,000 to actually do design and engineering, potentially do some permitting, really kind of get that project into a readiness stage. And if that works, then there's some Marine Board funding that we might be able to tap into after that, but I'm pretty excited about that. We've got a good group that worked on that. The other one we received was a DLCD Wetlands Technical Assistance Grant. This is one to help us do a local wetland inventory for properties that are inside the urban growth boundary, but outside city limits. And this is kind of it's basically a regulatory thing that DLCD is looking for. They're trying to help communities like us actually fund the development of these local wetland inventories. I think that's pretty much the main updates. The rest of it is projects that were already on the list and they're just a little farther along. Some of them have been wrapped up and completed. You guys saw we did the I guess if we got the water line, the Courthouse Road water line project yet, the award. Okay, yep, that's what I thought. So under budget. So Courthouse Road water line, that was a congressional award from Congresswoman Salinas. That's now been awarded, could be built, this summer. So a lot of those bigger projects are moving along and actually gonna get built. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
On physical page 3 is the grant programs applied for but not awarded. And then the very next page, on the back side of that page, is a bunch of awarded grants, some kind of piece.
Sorry. So we had the first ones, starting on page 1, is grants awaiting notification.
Right.
And then on page 2, start grants awarded. And then we go through about a year on that one, and then on page, I think it's 6. Yeah, that's page 6. Page 6, we get to grants and programs applied to but not awarded. Is that, or is you have different?
Well, maybe my pages are mixed up here. These are the ones that have been
Yeah,
not awarded,
correct.
applied for but not awarded. And then the next page is a bunch of completed grants on there. Wondering if it's
I think I got stapled wrong.
My stuff.
Except having this printer that shoots the paper out now, so I tried to get it back to the right word, but I.
Yeah, that's what I figured happened. It's probably just 4 years long. That's correct. Yeah, it is. And you just got a wonky one.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Assistant Secretary Irvine. I have a quick question. Are we working with, I know for a while there was a business owner who was doing paddleboard stuff at the park. Do we have like folk who are experts in this area giving advice on where we would look at it's for craft launching?
Yes, so, so yes and no, we've got, so part of the requirements for the Travel Oregon grant was that we have a local committee comprised of stakeholders, and so we've actually got. A representative from the Marine Board, a representative from Oregon Parks and Rec. Partly because they're developing paddle access at on the Lucky River, which would make a great, day trip for us. And then we also invited the hotel to participate, and then also I'm completely spacing his name, but there's the local guy who rents kayaks and will, kind of drop them off for you. He actually agreed to also be on the committee. So yeah, the goal is to kind of, in terms of experts, Travel Oregon is going to bring the sort of the design consultants and the engineer type people. But we do want, kind of that local, like who's going to be using it, and Public Works will also be on the committee to make sure that it's, designs are effective and maintainable.
and with phone. Is this also, I guess this is just a statement more than a question, but if we're gonna create more water access, I would encourage us to think about how our community will use that water access and make sure we have life jacket station there. We have signage communicating dangers of the undercurrent, all that stuff, because the concern. The more we create water access, which I think is great, the more people will use it, which creates more danger in certain situations, right? So just wanna throw that out there that I hope that the committee thinks about how we're messaging safety while we're bringing new opportunity to water access.
No, I think that's absolutely gonna be factored in.
No, I know the city just recently upgraded that EOS, more information out there. For the ones that were not awarded, I know there's probably a
Actually,
period.
before I have a quick comment on this one, also the Salem Rowing Club, because they have
Yes, you're right.
I think they would be interested in.
Yes, I'm
Or
trying.
at least, you know, even if it was a one-off meeting.
No, I actually know, I know the new person there, and I can't remember if we reached out to them, but yes, we will involve them.
The ones that were not awarded, I'm sure there's a bunch of reasons why. Is there any one thread that kind of is that kind of runs through the whole thing? I mean, are we shooting above our weight some of these, or are we just trying everything we can possibly try?
I mean, the universal theme of the ones we were awarded for is we had way more requests than we had funding for. You know, it kind of, you know, it obviously depends. Sometimes we get feedback, sometimes we don't. Usually, I would say usually we don't. You know, for the really big ones, you know, we put in for a big federal one. We actually got some good feedback about that one, just in terms of meeting their criteria. And it's usually if there is I mean, honestly, it's kind of in the hands of the reviewers, you know, it's sort of like, did we effectively sort of identify the problem statement to present the solution and why this is a compelling, but it must happen now. And if I had to guess, I'd say that's probably the biggest, you know, I'm making an assumption, but I think more than likely, you know, a reason for not approving is sort of that compelling need. You know, that's what they're always looking for, is like, this is really important, it needs to happen now. And, you know, whereas just because it's a good project doesn't mean, well, it could happen next year, or it could happen the year after that.
Just one more follow up. Mark is doing a great job. I'm glad we have him. But if he ever decides to move on, is he creating some kind of continuity file on how this is all done in the process, so that we can hopefully get somebody to step in?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like, so obviously we have files on all the grants we've applied for, the documents and all that kind of thing. In terms of what he does, yes, he is very good at it. But you know, grant writing is I guess a learned and transferable skill. And so, you know, I don't know, in terms of the way we look at, look at a grant, the way we go about approaching it. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of magic and artistry in it, but it's also like, well, here's their scoring criteria. They want this, but they want this. And, you know, it's funny because I'm more of a sort of flowy narrative writer when I'm doing these things. Marshall's literally bullet points, you know, they say they want this, bullet point that. They want this, bullet point that. And so I think even if he were to leave and somebody else were to come in, as long as they've got experience with grants generally, I think we can kind of have a similar level of success.
Then also, we're working in our finance department to create a tracking system for all of the grants, and that will assist if Marshall ever does leave on the reporting end,
Yes.
right? Because we talk about the fun end, we apply, we get the grant, whoop, but there's the reporting. And so we are taking the HUD TA grant and utilizing some of that to create a grant processing within finance.
Yeah, because honestly, that if Marshall was to leave, that would be the area that might, if we were gonna have a problem because he left, that's where it would be.
Can't we?
No.
Right. This is a detailed question from the first 2 pages of the report. I see under the Oregon State Capital Foundation, the grant for a sponsorship exhibit. And that's $9,000, but can you explain why down at the bottom of that page, the Oregon State Capital Foundation we put in a grant for 17 million. That's clearly more than a pop-up.
77.
Yeah, it's got a decimal point in it for some
It's
reason.
supposed to be 17,000, not 17
Yes,
million.
yes.
Okay, I'll cross off a couple of zeros. Oh, that was my fault. I retract that question.
So if my math is correct, although there is no sum on the state provided consultants. The amount of money we took in 2025 and awarded grants is significantly less than 2024. So we're seeing a decline in our funding. Can you remind me how much it costs to have a grant writer on staff here? And if you anticipate higher grant return on investments in the future?
Yeah, so Marshall's a consultant, he's contracted at $100,000 per year. And you know, grants are always gonna be kind of an up and down type of thing. A lot of it depends on what funding sources are offered, you know, so for example, with the change in administration, a lot of federal grants essentially went away. We were actually working on a significant $10 million ask for FEMA, a BRIC grant through FEMA for the water treatment facility. It was looking really good. That program was canceled. So, you know, like I said, there's the availability of funding sources is always going to depend on who's got how much money and how much they're offering. So that's going to kind of wax and wane. I do think, you know, there will be, you know, we're always going after programs. I think that's important, and you know, we're always looking to secure those funds. The other thing though, that Marshall really is doing is taking a big load on the administration of the grants that we have gotten. Particularly the federal ones like the Economic Development Administration grants, and even this, the one for the Corvallis water line. You know, there's reporting that has to go in, there's a lot of coordination that has to happen even once the grants are awarded. And so Marshall's doing a lot of that where he's reaching out to Gerald, he's reaching out to Shannon and saying, hey, can you give me these numbers and get this information, you know, collecting it. You know, design processes, making sure we're getting meetings set up and that everybody's coordinated on what's happening. So there is also, you know, obviously landing the money is big. That's really what it's all about. But it is important to also, you know, kind of be able to track that money and manage that money. And that's another area that it's hard to really kind of describe in a way that sounds compelling. But I mean, honestly, that is the part, you know, for me at least, that he's really taking a load off my shoulders. You know, the writing the grant, yes, it takes a bunch of time, but it's pretty discreet. Like you've got, you know, a couple weeks or a month or whatever while you're working on it. The administration is just that sort of never ending dribble of work that just doesn't seem to go away.
Where on here is that grant you just talked about, the Corvallis water line grant?
That one is, I think that was a 2023.
2023, okay.
I saw something.
Oh, money. It should be there, just one.
Yeah, well, because it was called out for the.
I know that.
Yeah, maybe we.
I think that there's a Scrivener's error and it's not.
No, it's in 2024. It's our EPA community grant dash appropriation, so yes, it's like 2/3 of the way down,
Okay,
880,000.
so that is 2020. Because even the ones that we awarded or that we got in 2025 seem to be very specific to actually, I mean, again, besides maybe the housing planning project, I mean, very specific to only help a few members of our community. You know, I mean, the water line from 2024 seems more appropriate type of funding that would benefit the majority of our community. So maybe it would be nice if maybe, you know, when we're searching for these funds, if we could look at something that's really gonna benefit the entire community instead of a plaque or, you know, just very, very specific.
Yeah.
Because I know the community has said it, they want things in our community, activities, things to do in our community. And we'll get search for funding for those things as well.
Yeah, no, we are always on the lookout for, you know, I mean, really, our primary target is infrastructure, because that will help us keep rates under control, to help us bring SDCs down. That's our primary target. The state has been rolling out some new infrastructure programs, which we've been tapping. But yeah, we're always looking for opportunities, and it really just kind of depends on who's putting funding out there.
Last question. You said that with the change in the federal government, you're not getting the funding for the water treatment plant, or that we hope to get. Do you think we should relook at the water treatment planning
With the water treatment planning,
for funding of the water treatment planning to see if it's gonna exist? Cause right now, my fear is we're gonna take on this debt and it's gonna be spread to, you know, the people who live in our community right now, instead of being funded by goals that we hope that we would have from the federal government.
I mean, I think, and I'm gonna, if Gerald Gerald probably have a more complete answer, but what I would say is right now, I don't believe grants are actually factored into the expected funding for the water treatment facility. That's a bonus. And that's why we are going for these infrastructure grants.
Yeah, we built the rate structure based on an assumption that we weren't gonna be able to get any grants and SDCs weren't going to come in. So as the SDCs, or as grants come in that offset the SDCs, we're able to lower the SDC rate. And if there's any grants that cover what would typically be the cost of rates, then we monitor that and can look at later on in the rate increase, because it goes for 5 years and then incremental steps up. We can look at the later years to see if the money that we were successful at getting in grants maybe take some of that increase off towards the end. But it was based on a long-term loan to build the entire project and it being covered by rates.
So one other thing I'll just mention that we're working on is, you know, some of these awards have been community directed spending, the company knows earmarks, whether from the state or from the feds. We are working on a community directed spending request. Right now with our federal delegation, we're gonna be asking for $5 million for the water treatment plant. And again, it's a lot of, that's one where there's not a lot of writing, but there's a lot of just kind of talking and working the system. But yeah, again, we're trying to find money where we can to help basically buy down that cost.
Are there any grants that were applied for in 24 or 25 that we were not awarded, that we will be applying for again with the changing climate at the national capital?
I think, I mean, maybe, the big one it might have been 2025 that we, so anyways, we put in for a big chunk of money for Central Talmadge. It was a federal grant. We're not awarded that. That was one where after getting the feedback on it, we're like, you know, this actually probably wasn't as good of a fit as we thought it was. So that one, we would not be reapplying for that grant program. The other ones, you know, most of these programs come around annually or every 2 years. And so we're on every grant list that we can find to be notified when something's coming up. And so, yeah, we do, you know, if we did not succeed, then we typically will jump in and go after it again. You know, fortunately, except for that one big one, the federal one, we haven't missed on too many big grants, so.
And a little, not quite one that we missed on, but one Sean touched on, we were originally looking at the BRIC grant. And that program was canceled or removed, put on hiatus, whatever you wanna call it, by this administration. It's going through the legal process right now. If the BRIC grant comes back, we fully intend to take a look at the BRIC grant. And we have spent, Mayor and I, a lot of time talking to our federal delegates to continue to encourage them to fight for that BRIC grant to come back. Because that's a significant amount of funding. I think it's 50 million. And that, I mean, we can start off with the 10, it puts us in a really good spot for 40 to get to the next step. So we will definitely be looking for the BRIC grant to come back out.
Thank you.
And I think it's helpful to note also that Independence just has a really good track record of being good stewards with grant funding, which is very helpful. And I think that relationship that we have with our state and federal delegations really does help position us well and help keep the lines of communication open about what's coming on and what we can expect. Any last questions for Mr. Irvin? All right.
Sorry, please. For grants, my understanding is that a lot of the grants, especially at the federal level, are for one-time expenses or infrastructure or physical projects instead of programmatic funding. So are there, are there strategies to look for or communicate to our state and federal partners the need for programmatic support?
Yeah, I think, yes, you're absolutely right. The grant funding is typically it's kind of, it's sort of usually intended to be one-time money, like, I want you to build this thing. You can fund programs with it, but it's usually like a discrete, like the Primeros Pasos, the childcare business development training that we did. We got the CDBG grant for it. It's like a limited time. I'm gonna fund a teacher to do this thing and then, we're gonna be done. So, during COVID, it was interesting because a lot of I think the state, federal people did recognize that, that a lot of these organizations offer services that are important, but also that aren't necessarily revenue generators, profit makers, things like that, but they're still needed. And so they did offer a lot of essentially just ongoing expense programmatic funding. That has mostly died away again because, it's a tough thing. I mean, yes, we're always talking to them and saying, hey, this is the kind of stuff we need. But, especially when you're talking about elected officials, they want, what's that new thing we're doing? What can I cut a ribbon on? What can I, what is this, sort of special thing that I'm funding as opposed to just, well, I'm funding this same person to keep doing their same stuff. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and yes, we are always kind of talking about that. But unfortunately, for the most part, we usually have to try to come up with creative ways to sort of fund, kind of fund programs in a way that, that creates a new thing while also supporting existing operations.
Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, so I promised Kenna that I would do the code revisions in their entirety and not bring them to you piecemeal, like one chapter at a time. So we spent quite a few months going over the ones that touch public works, which is chapter 26, 32, and 34. 34 being the utility section and SDCs. And what I wanted to do, and Fred actually jumped in on chapter 26 with an adjustment that should be in your desktop. And it's I think it's on the second page. The one red line comment that I did have in my section, he's covered in his. So if we get the nod that this looks good, it takes care of mine too. And what I'd like to do is just go to the red line pages. So starting in your packet on page 40. I have one red line comment on there. Did any of you have any questions on page 40? One of the comments I did receive is the City of Independence Public Works Design Standards is called that kind of uniformly throughout the chapters. So I will go through and do word search, because in some sections, I think in a lot of the utilities, it just says Public Works Standards, which is basically.
I think there's only two instances.
In this chapter.
Yeah. Well, throughout all three of them.
Okay, okay. So I'll have that trued up when we actually bring back the final version, which we're planning on having that in the June meeting for the ordinance. Any questions on page 41?
So when you say page 40,
Of your packet.
And it's on your screen.
oh, thank you. I was totally looking at my paper, obviously, okay. Because the numbering that I have each section printed out, the red lines
Yeah,
that were
there's like
emailed
39
to us.
pages, and I gave you a clean copy and then a red line.
Right,
copy.
and I just printed the words.
Okay.
So, okay.
So what I'll do is I'll say what the packet page number is and the section page number is to help.
Thank you.
So, packet 41, page 239. Okay, packet page 42, page 3 of 39. And, this is the section where Fred had some adjustments to, section 2646. So I'll let them go.
Perfect. So this section here is something that I've been wanting to change for quite a while, partially because right now we have a sidewalk eating area permit. We just do not do a good job of going out and getting the annual renewals and the liability insurance associated with those sidewalk eating areas that we're supposed to, that the code says that we're gonna do. And so I've looked at this. And years ago, like I called McMinnville, I called Salem, like, how do you guys do sidewalk eating areas? And I think at the time McMinnville said, well, we don't really do anything for them. And then Salem, they said, yeah, we used to have a permit. And then we had trouble getting people to renew their permit. And so then we lowered the price of our permit and we still had people having not renewing. Like, I think they even put it at 0 and they still didn't have people renew it. And then they said, you know what, it makes more sense for us just to establish some basic parameters related to sidewalk eating areas or obstructions in the sidewalk. And so this code would be modeled based on that. Basically, it's what this is trying to say is if you're putting something in the sidewalk, you're liable for it. And you need to keep a certain walking path through. Also a certain area for when you're opening a car door that people can get out from the car door and get to the sidewalk. So that's basically what this is intended to do.
So I'm trying to think in my head of all the places that have outside eating, and I think of Ovenbird, and I think of summer locations like at Frozone, and I'm sure there's more. Do you see a problem with how they're setting up now, those two locations, in how they would not be accessible? And what are the fees that you're talking about? Because I don't see a fee schedule.
So there used to be a fee associated with it. How they're setting up right now, so like one is the brew, one as well as like the Independence Coffee ice cream shop used to set out tables, as well as Jubilee. The one that we had trouble with at the time was Jubilee a lot of times, because they would put their chairs within the 5 feet. So yeah, we would go out and we would say, hey, you need to keep an accessible path through here. And we would have that conversation with them. What we are hoping to do with this is expand it to beyond sidewalk eating areas. So basically, if you're putting anything out on the sidewalk, be it a sign, be it merchandise, be it whatever, you're liable for that, and it cannot go within that 5 feet as well. So that's really part of what I see as the existing problem for existing focus, is it just says sidewalk eating areas and it's silent regarding things like merchandise, regarding things like signs and all that sort of stuff. And so basically what this would do is say, yeah, you're fine putting merchandise, temporary signage out in the sidewalk, you're liable essentially if something happens. To somebody walking by, that's on you. Also, it would specifically say as well. Temporary displays of merchandise and signage should be removed from the sidewalk when the business is not in, when the business is closed for the night. That's what our existing A-board signage requirement is. A lot of businesses do not do very well with that, but that's how our current code reads, and this would just sort of carry that over as well.
I don't see where you say you don't want the no sidewalk eating area because it doesn't include merchandise, but then you don't include merchandise and the red line changes. I don't see that. And then you're also saying like the business downtown that sells odds and ends, I can't remember it's not collection. Yeah, the collection, thank you. They would have to remove all their stuff off the sidewalk at the end of each day?
I think that with that, so I've had conversations with them, they say that some of that stuff is not merchandise. So that it's more decoration. What this would do is be more permissive with regards to something like that than our current standards are. Currently, I would say what we probably should do is go tell them, hey, you don't have permission to use this sidewalk right now. It should be removed. This would essentially say, yeah, you can have displays, you can have flower pots or whatever out on the sidewalk, but you're liable for that.
Charge them.
No. Are you looking at the right code section?
This is interesting. I asked for this packet last week and I came to pick it up last Thursday and I was given the wrong packet. So I apologize for not having, I had done all this research on another issue, so that's my fault. But I thought when I was picking up the packet, it's the single page.
And yeah, and I'm sorry, it's a single page and it says potential change for sidewalk eating areas. And it should have been put on the dais.
Yeah, I see that.
For the meeting.
This does include merchandise.
Yeah.
Yeah, listed in those text, and I think that's one of the concerns that I know were expressed to me previously, that some of the displays that were adjacent to the car doors and people couldn't open their car doors or get out of their vehicles because of everything that was kind of stacked on that sidewalk. So I think my understanding is the intent behind this is keeping that 5-foot clear space for accessibility students.
May I suggest that, since this was put out, it wasn't part of the original packet because Fred came to me at last minute and said, hey, can we change this to get this kind of caught up with other stuff that he's working on? If it's okay, just to take a few minutes and allow the council just to read through this section A to get a complete understanding of the change that he's proposed.
Other questions on this particular change, potential change?
So Fred, you made the argument that on section 26-46, part 3, it says all temporary signage or merchandise displayed by a business within the right of way must be removed by the sidewalk when the business is not open for business. So this puts us back to the collection again. You're saying they wouldn't have to remove that because they define that material outside of their business as a display and it's not merchandise, so they could keep it? Is that what you're saying?
That's what they have argued. I think that there would be a certain amount of interpretation about what it includes display versus merchandise that I think that we would probably do internally. But yes, it would be far more flexible. It's intended to be more flexible than the current standard. So I mean, I should give a little context for this too. In the past, I talked with our insurance agent about doing this change, and they're like, no, as a matter of fact, you shouldn't do that. In fact, you should be going out and telling every business if they have a sign, if they have flower pots, if they have merchandise that they need to provide liability for the use of the sidewalk, because they were concerned that by their use of it, potentially we could be liable if something happened. That didn't quite sit right with me. And so, and I have talked with folks like the collection, because we have heard that their display is extensive. We have heard complaints about that display. This is trying to sort of like get to a sort of point where it's, yeah, you can use a sidewalk. So long as you understand that there's certain expectations associated with that sidewalk, removing merchandise when you're not open, keeping a 5-foot clear space along the sidewalk, a 3-foot clear space along the car door opening part. And then also knowing that you're liable for anything that might happen along the sidewalk because of your use associated with it.
So I hear you're saying this is supposed to make things easier for the business. I just don't see that. And how does that work? So the collection is a public sidewalk. Does that change how High School Pharmacy puts out their wheelbarrows, wood, pellets, everything they put out front of their business? Because that's an area that is ADA accessible. So do they have to, are they gonna be living up to this code change you're suggesting?
So we look at Central Plaza a little bit different than we look at downtown places, because that's a private sidewalk through there.
I think a good example of this might be like Bramble will put a clothing rack outside, but they always take it in at night. And so some of it seems like it's common sense of what a business owner would do, allowing them to be able to put displays out to attract the eye of customers, but at the end of the day, the expectation is that they are bringing that back inside and also maintaining these clear areas, which is, like you pointed out, it's pretty standard with other city codes.
Right.
I think the collection is super cute though. I mean, it's the way they get people's attention when they're not open all the time, and you can still see, oh wow, this is what they have outside. I want to go inside and check out everything else. I mean, I just don't see the harm in it.
It's a public safety issue.
I mean, part of it is a public safety issue. I mean,
If there's the ADA space there.
So, and
Because
what
they have it underneath their awning underneath there.
So one thing that I'll say is if take any, and I won't say a business name. Somebody walked along and displayed merchandise and pulled it and it fell on them, or a kid is walking along a sidewalk, pulls merchandise that's not fixed to the ground, right? Not stabilized. That's a potential liability for us, right? In part, what this is trying to say is if you use the sidewalk in that way, you are responsible for any damages that might be associated with that. You like to say something?
So for clarity, Fred, we're not saying they can't use the sidewalk, we're saying you can use the sidewalk except for the 5 feet. But it is up to you to cover any liability, is that correct?
That's exactly right. And the idea is to, sure, you can do some display outside to make your business look cute. It might be flowers, all that sort of stuff. We don't really talk about that, but what we are saying, if you use the sidewalk in that way, you are liable for the potential injuries or damage that may occur.
If people aren't bringing their merchandise in at night, then that's on them to protect the merchandise.
So thank you, Mayor, I have a quick question around the flower baskets, cause the one could logically argue the same thing about the flower basket. Too.
Yeah.
That is I to give those to the city, so those are city owned, if God forbid it falls on someone's head or something somehow, where a kid pulls it and it falls on them or any of that stuff. Couldn't that same logic go to the flower baskets or things like that too?
IDA does accept all the expense for the flower baskets.
So it'd be there, so we're just being consistent with liability issues.
Once they end up on the sidewalk, then we rely on the city's rules and regulations, and if we found that the flower baskets were an attractive nuisance to some tall child, then we'd eliminate that one.
Well, I hope we never have to, thank you, it's the same kind of logic, so we wanna make sure that we're answering those questions if a business owner is saying.
Yes.
There's this also on the sidewalk within the 5 foot right of way. How is it different than my bit, right, so
And
thank you for indulging my question.
Councilor Gordon?
Have you asked the collection, or do we know how much it would cost them to insure the area outside of their businesses?
I don't think we're requiring them to do it.
We're just solely making it clear that they're responsible for the liability associated with it.
They're responsible for the liability, how do they prove that without having some sort of policy?
Hopefully we have a policy on their business, right?
We're not asking them to prove it, counselor. We don't care. We're just indicating that we are not liable. So that our community members who are paying their taxes are not the ones who are going to be liable for anything that happens on that sidewalk because of a business. We don't care if they have it or not, that's up to them. But our community is not going to pay for anything that happens because of a business. That's what we're making clear.
I'd also like to add, we have this same kind of provision in another section that relates to sidewalks. All property owners are responsible for the maintenance and upkeep of the sidewalk fronting their property. So if you don't maintain and upkeep it and you have a tripping hazard, it's written in our code and it's standard language in just about every agency out there, that if somebody trips and falls, they're not eligible to sue the city. It falls back on the property owner for not maintaining the sidewalk.
So since you brought that up, I have a question about that. What if it's city owned trees that are causing the sidewalk damage? Where does that fit into this calculation?
It's a great question. Fred knows I can't stand street trees. I'll be honest with you, they tear up infrastructure, they tear up pipes, they tear up sewer lines. But they're a community beautification thing. One of the things that unfortunately Independence has fallen down on is providing either enough space for the trees so that they don't damage the infrastructure, i.e. an 8 foot to 10 foot wide planter strip. Well, then your right of ways become massive and you take up buildable ground. The alternative is if you have a smaller one, you put in root barriers, and we have it in our standards and have had it since I've been here, where every single tree in these smaller planter areas, they have physical root barriers, so the trees' roots go down and they don't have the potential of heating up the curb or the sidewalk. That wasn't a standard back in the day. So we've adjusted and changed to try to mitigate and stop that from happening.
So again, my question though, what does a homeowner do if their sidewalk is damaged by a city-owned tree? If someone gets hurt on somebody's sidewalk and they sue the homeowner, can the homeowner then sue the city for not maintaining the trees?
So because the property owner still is responsible for the maintenance of the tree in front of their house. Basically, from the back of the curb all the way to your property line, you're responsible for the maintenance of that area, including the street trees. So if you have a situation where you have a tree that's damaging the sidewalk, there's a process where you can go through, and it actually passed with the recent update. If you have an existing, this is one of the things that I wrote in there with finance. If you have an existing sidewalk or an existing driveway and it's defective, we're gonna issue you a no-fee permit to go out and do whatever repairs. We'll do the inspection. You're already, as citizens, you're already paying Public Works for that service. So we'll do the inspections and the permitting, and it's at no cost to the existing property owner. It will also allow you to look at, well, this older tree that is heating up the sidewalk is not an approved tree now. So what other tree could I plant in there with the root barrier to stop this from happening, and I still get the street tree?
There's a situation where something like that has been mitigated for public safety on the corner of Third and B Street.
Where it gets tricky is if you have a historic tree. That's a whole nother layer.
And I wanted to say also that a number of years ago, we started dealing with the thought about the A-frames that businesses put out on the sidewalk to announce that they're open and direct people to them. And this has been something that's come up over and over again, and we have a pretty good relationship with the businesses now, knowing to not leave those outside, because they're usually put in places that pedestrians might be walking on at night or near, and you couldn't see maybe as well. To me, the most important statement, or the most important part of that statement, is to get those A-frame signs out of the sidewalk. And I would think as a business, I'd wanna use that as a, hey, look, we're open, and not have it up 24/7, because it's not as effective then. We still.
All right, any further questions on this particular section?
Okay.
So, Jared, maybe before we dive back in, can you give us a reminder about the time frame that we're working within here?
Yes, so the goal, when I initially did this, was to try to get through all of the code revisions in one night. If not, we have the March work session set up for doing it. If we can't get through it in March, then I gotta talk to Ken about April, because we wanna bring this back to you in its final version at the June meeting for adoption.
March is probably not.
And just remember, March is spring break. So this is the only thing that you will see if you move this on to March.
That's the 24th.
Correct.
I'm hoping with some of these pages in here that don't have any red lines, I'll be able to flip forward pretty quickly and go through them. Because most of the others, the maximum number of pages is like 50, and there's some that don't have any. So
I just wanna say too, Mr. Fisher, that, you know, I took the opportunity to send questions to you and point out things that I thought were inconsistent or what have you. And I appreciate you getting back to me on that. I mean, you gave us 2 weeks to review, or you gave us a week to review this, I think, maybe 2 weeks? Anyway, it's a good amount of time you gave us to review it.
I was given the wrong packet though. So
Well, the package is available online, Council Road, you choose to use a paper copy.
I choose to do what I like to do. You don't have to argue with me. I'm just explaining to
I
you that I was
know, that's
given the
right.
wrong packet. I asked for the hard copy packet, I was given the wrong one.
Mark, when did you send these out? I'm sorry.
The original ones for Gerald went out 2 weeks ago, and then they went out again in the packet last week. And I did print you out a packet, it was in your folder,
And I got it is the wrong.
yeah, I don't know who gave it to the wrong person, if you didn't go back there.
I did go back there.
It was scanned.
I took everything there and I also took
I just got out of there today.
Counselor,
It doesn't matter, I'm
we
just
can
saying.
chat
just
afterwards
saying.
if you would like,
Yeah.
as opposed to you addressing my staff. Thank you.
I'm just being told that I had 2 weeks to look at this by another counselor, and I'm just trying to explain why I didn't look at it, because I was given the wrong information.
I reviewed it online.
There are multiple copies available, multiple ways to look at this. Myra, do you? For people to get their packets in a timely manner, we do need to be able to communicate with you, so it is, especially a packet like this that is extensive. Do you have a cutoff time or protocol that we should be following to make this easier to facilitate?
I usually print them when I post it.
Perfect, thank you. And then do you follow up with people via email or text?
When they're small packets, they usually don't ask for them ahead of time, and I put them in their spot.
Perfect. We all have our folders, we all have where we can get our information. Okay.
And although a little bit off topic, one of the things we are discussing is no longer printing paper packets.
Yes.
It is incredibly expensive. And the toner is expensive, the paper is expensive, so this may be a moot issue if we have to move to that to continue to save money. And all of us, including me, will end up having to utilize digital, so it has been a good topic to talk about.
Thank you. All right, so moving on.
Okay, packet page 44 and 45, page 5 of 39, 6 of 39. Questions on that? Okay, moving on, page 46, and it's page 7 of 39. This was one of my favorite ones down in B, city marshal. I don't think we employ a city marshal anymore. It just kind of goes to show how old some of these codes are, and we were trying to get them up to this century.
By the way, I looked up the last recorded salary for a city marshal. They made $26 a month.
I could afford that.
Page 47 of the packet, which is 8 of 39. One small edit to add in storm. Page 48 of the packet, page 9 of 39, we just added in city recorder, who's Myra likes to be called city recorder, not just recorder. Page 49 of the packet, which is 10 of 39. Change this to approval or order of abandonment in the title. Trying to clean up some of the language so it makes sense with the text. Page 50, 11 of 39. By law, we have to publish in a paper, but we also do more than that. I didn't want to add all of the extra things in there. I just wanted to stay in the code with the basic requirements, but know that we still post it on the city website. It goes out on social, things go out on social media. We send stuff out in DJC, but as far as the state requirements go, they want one paper of local circulation at a minimum. Page 51 of the packet, the city recorder in. Nothing on page 52, page 53. Did a little language cleanup there on 26-153. And nothing on 54 of the packet or 55. Nothing on 56 or 57. Nothing on 58. Packet page 59, page 20 of 39. Did a little wordsmithing on this from a comment from Councilor Core. So it would instead read a traffic control contractor information and their traffic control plan. So I just flipped it around. So it's just because the traffic control contractor is the one who produces the traffic control plan. So makes sense. Page 60 just had the change in numbering because of the add-in. Page 61, changed to Parks Board because we've already passed a code that removed the and recreation. Trying to stay consistent with the other code sections. Page 62. Packet. Page 63. Page 64. I think the old standard for space above trees was 13 feet, it was raised to 14 feet because of changes in truck heights and stuff, that was done long time ago. Page 65, small edit. There was nothing on page 66 or 67. Nothing on 68 or 69. Nothing on 70 or 71. Nothing on 72 or 73. Nothing on 74 or 75. Same goes for 76 and 77. And nothing on 78, and that's the end of section 26. That'll look good on 26. Yeah. So moving on to chapter 32, red lines, it's page 107 of the packet, 106 of the packet. That first one, you'll see my comment on there. I have this question into this city attorney, trying to find out what language is actually there. Once I do get a response back from the city attorney, I'll put that correct language in here for the final one. And you'll see that red line when it comes back to you. Page 107. It's council powers and authority, council report.
Yeah, this is the area that I had a lot of consternation with. I don't know when this was developed, maybe things were different back in the old days. But I'm not entirely comfortable taking on responsibility that a civil engineer should have. So my recommendation is to strike that whole section with the understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fisher, with the understanding is all that responsibility will then go back to the public works director.
Right. It's public works director, and the old term is roadmaster. So anything within the public right of way falls under the
Appropriately experienced individual.
Yeah. And by taking out section 3225 and 3226, which is the delegation of council powers. The only thing I would need to do is adjust 3227 to take out saying and just leave it as regulation standards. And then that first sentence, the regulations of these streets shall be based upon, and the rest of the comments in there.
Quick clarification on that though, I hear where you're coming from with that. With things like, designation of parking meters, I'm just learning as an example, it seems like. Maybe using that as an example of walking through, seems like city council would want to be able to give feedback or input on. Maybe somebody says, we wanna look at putting parking meters downtown. And then city council being able to say, well, does that just include Main Street, does that include side streets, et cetera, so like. Maybe walk through that as an example.
But yeah, the best answer that I could give is, as your public works director, I would not even consider going out and slapping parking meters in without the city council and city managers' approvals. I wouldn't consider going out and making the street a one-way street without a full public process or.
Weigh in on your recommendation of what to do.
Right.
We're not gonna make the recommendation of how to do it or whatever, you know.
But take, for example, let's say, somebody said, you know, a business owner came to me and said, well, I don't want it to be a one-way street anymore, I want it to go back to a two-way street. That's not a decision that I would make. I would gather all of the information up, give you an engineering opinion on what that would do, not only to that street, but the surrounding traffic, and bring that back to the city council for review and approval. But one of the things that this whole type of code was used for is somebody came in and complained about speeding. They're speeding down my streets. City councils would go, well, I have the authority, public works director, I want you to go out and put a stop sign at that intersection. Without any engineering justification, without any traffic justification, it basically is used as a political tool to give people what they wanted, which in the NBTCD, which is the guidebook for signage, it specifically states in there, you don't use stop signs for traffic calming. So if it's something simple like traffic signing, we look to the transportation system plan, our public works standards, and the NBTCD on what we're supposed to have. And if it's something bigger like designation of truck routes, that's in the TSP. It's already spelled out, that goes through a full public process. If it's a one-way street, parking meters, we would gather all that back up and bring it to city council, because we're gonna want to, and if you look in some cities, they have actual ordinances that specify parking meters shall be on the streets. From this street to this street, along this street, parking meters on both sides. No parking zones, that kind of stuff. Truck loading and unloading zones. If somebody came in and said they wanted a new loading zone that was gonna take out parking, I wouldn't make that decision. I would definitely bring it to you and say, are you okay with this? Because that's what they're asking for. And it would be a public process. Does that make sense?
That's
Okay.
close.
I'd be out of a job really quick if I did that.
Sure.
Sure.
Going back just a tiny bit to section 26-400, when it's talking about alcoholic beverages, I just have a question. So if I'm the owner of my house, I own the property, I own the property in front of my house, and I'm responsible for the sidewalk as far as maintenance and that sort of thing, is that sidewalk still considered public space? Like, cause it said I can't have a beer on the sidewalk.
Yes, it is public right of way, it's
Okay.
regulated.
Okay.
The things that can be in it is sidewalks, street trees,
Yep.
and approved street signs.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I'm more confused. So I kind of see us, correct me if I'm wrong, I see us as, we're the governing board, we're delegating powers to you to make recommendations, then you're gonna come back up to us for the thumbs up or the thumbs down. And that's how the process should, right? That's kind of how I read it in the code, so I'm a little lost what the concern is. Maybe I'm just just changing the code automatically in my mind to read it that that's what it's saying. But I heard Councilor Core had some concerns, so I'm just trying to understand.
Can you bring that part up?
Just so I'm fully understanding what you're trying to say, so that it works in my brain. So I apologize.
I understand, well, the thing is, you understand the process.
Sure, maybe that's.
People who don't understand the process.
Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah, that's my concern. I don't want the the designation of through streets to be delegated to me. I don't know anything about through streets.
Okay, so
I'm
if
fine
you're
with-
worried that a community member will say this, come to you saying.
Yes,
You wanna change the speed limit,
Yes.
you wanna change.
and my concern too
Thank
is
you.
what Mr. Fisher mentioned earlier, is the political weight associated with that.
But I'll give you an example, if you look
Yeah, okay.
on 107C4. Do you as council members know what the proper traffic control signals or signs are, what the size should be, what the designation of it should be?
No.
No.
That's.
I get it now, so
Yeah.
can I do that follow up?
Yeah.
Thank you. So. I guess I assume. That if we get an email, a community member emails us about speed limit on their street. I would forward that to Mr. Fisher, Mr. Fisher would say, here's the process to have council, here's the process. To engage your community in potentially changing the speed limit if it's truly a hazard, right? And that we already have a process kind of developed that maybe not in code, but in procedure. At least that people can understand, these are the steps to at least have council consider whether this makes sense or not.
That's
For clarity, you would,
Okay,
for clarity, you would send it to the city manager,
City
who would then
manager.
send it to the appropriate department head and get an answer for you.
If it came from the city council, it would go to the city manager.
Uh-huh.
If you told the citizen. You should reach out to, they could send it to the city manager, or they could send it directly to me.
okay, thank you.
That makes sense?
Let's. So, but there is a procedure that they can say, well, you need to get
Yes.
10 signatures from your neighbors and then do this or that or whatever it
Yeah.
is, right?
And maybe in that section B, in front of all those statements 1 through 9, if you added the word ultimate. That means the council is the full and final, but not the initial. Point of designation.
So I'll give you an example. If something comes to me and they want some particular signage up, right? That signage, if placed there, is not lawful. If you put the language in here that says you can supersede the public works director, you can do that. But here's what happens. You assume a huge amount of liability. Because if there's an accident that happens based on that, that has no engineering background behind it, you open yourself up and CIS, who's our insurance carrier, would be like, did you, what did you do? How did you go through this? Did you tell them don't do it? This, like I said, this is an old code and it's kind of politically driven. We're trying to take the politics out of it and just leave it to engineering standards. If something comes up, like the parking meters or something like that, automatically we would bring that forward. To the
Because
city
that's
council.
part of established procedure.
It's
And
more
for
of a
me,
policy.
ultimate says after all the procedure is done, but I can understand where there'd be confusion.
There is in my mind, there isn't a single resident who's gonna look to the code to find out how to get a stop sign put someplace. They're gonna,
They always email.
they're either gonna email you, or they're gonna email one of us or all of us, and we're gonna send that to City Manager West. I mean, I don't think we need something in the code to tell them that. That's why I'm saying this section should just be struck. I think it's confusing. I'm uncomfortable with the political nature of it. And quite frankly, I'm uncomfortable with anybody thinking that council has the authority or the experience to make these recommendations on our own.
I guess I would say that that's not what this says.
It's like-
But I hear what Counselor Core is saying. So,
Well, one of the other things that I didn't like in this code.
Should like to exercise all municipal traffic authority. Yeah.
which means we say yay or nay.
That's not what that says. you could wordsmith that to say that, but that is not what that says.
Like, item C. The city council shall by resolution. So every time I have to go, put up new stop signs in a new subdivision,
Okay, for,
I have to come to you before I give plan approvals for a developer who's already on the schedule. I have to find time in your council meetings to ask you to pass a resolution. If I change any signage, I have to ask you for a resolution. Even if it's specified in the transportation master plan as this intersection needs to be changed to an all-way stop.
And let's talk about what a resolution takes. So we go through this, we create the resolution, we send the resolution to our attorneys to review, we pay the attorneys to review it to bring it back to you. Every time Gerald has to do that, it's expensive.
And it comes out of the street fund.
But you have to, so Counselor Coors, sorry. Counselor Coors' concern is something that is not a proposed change, so she found this on her own. And this is a concern that she is finding and bringing up, but this has not applied to anything that we've done in the past. Because we have in here written, city accept those powers specifically and expressly delegated under this title or another ordinance. So our other ordinances cover you controlling the traffic signages in developments, correct? So, I mean, you brought up a scenario that is not likely to happen.
It does, you can delegate it, which has been done.
Right.
You can also undelegate it. So you can say, guess what, Public Works Director and City Manager, you no longer get decisions to do this. We're gonna go ahead and make these decisions.
Okay, so so under Counselor Coors' recommendation, you and city staff are gonna look at this area again, change it, redline it, and send it to us in a different format.
Yeah, I can strip this down, massage it. So if you wanna leave section B in there, the things that are in section B. The through streets, the one-way streets, the truck routes, parking meters. If you wanna leave that in there, we can leave that piece in there. What you're gonna get is the Public Works Director is gonna give you a recommendation. You may not like the recommendation, you may go a different route. And at that point, from an engineering standard, you've assumed all liability going forward.
So because I'm a liaison to traffic safety committee, it seems like most of these things are things that we would talk about in the traffic safety committee meetings, at least under section B. And discuss it there and then propose that to council. Under that means, are you saying we would no longer be doing that in traffic safety committees? Discussing
Traffic Safety Committee is mainly police reports. Has very little to do with public works.
Oh, we've studied traffic stops and the change on Gun Club Road and the change of signage on G Street and 7th Street. I mean, we've discussed that. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
No, it's not.
To keep B in there, you would have to change B, the powers of the council shall include but not be limited to, based on a recommendation of the Public Works Director.
I can take a run at this language and send it just this section back out to kind of get through Kenna to kind of get individual feedback. What you like, don't like, so you can see it. I can try to massage these sections. And then send something back out to you.
yes,
And then for clarity, what will occur is if we get through this tonight. This information will be sent to you digitally via email, so you can look at it because we're on a timeline. And then once you get your comments back, this will go through our attorneys. Then we'll bring it back to you at council for an actual decision. There may be some adjustments by our attorneys. We will probably recommend at that time that you listen to our attorneys and take those adjustments. That is the process that this will go through.
I've already sent the first version to them to solicit their comments back. Any changes that come out of this meeting, like Fred's changes, I'm gonna redo this. I'm going to send the city attorney an updated version with any comments that they had. They sent back to me. I would go ahead and put all that back together, send it to the city attorney again. One last look, did we get everything? Does it look good? And then that red line comment would go back out to you before the final adoption.
And I think from my standpoint, I'm a fan of cleaning up old codes. There's, I think, a lot of things that we're discovering, and the language is older, not relevant to how we conduct business today. We happen to have a good public works director right now, so I think there's a lot of trust in that, but I guess in my mind, it's like, what if we had a public works director that sort of went rogue and started just making these decisions without how council getting looked in, and I think that's maybe where this safety check.
Yeah.
Is giving some heart.
Let me just.
So there would be layers.
To that, yes,
So remember, there would be layers, because if the public works director went rogue, hopefully you had a good city manager who wouldn't
Yes,
let them go rogue.
exactly. Yes.
So there's always layers.
Yes.
I'll take a run at this and try to come up with some language. I think I got everybody's kind of where you want to go with it. So let me try to qualify that.
For clarity, Gerald, you're gonna try and modify it, and then we're gonna send it out to them.
Yeah, this
Okay.
one, the one little section, I'll save all the rest of the other stuff for the big one that goes to the city agent. But I want to try to get this section locked down with something that everybody's kind of happy with.
Well, I don't wanna beat a dead horse, but doesn't the charter outline our powers? I mean, are we in conflict with the charter? We say something about the city council may delegate powers or have power in this. Just food for thought.
I'll make a note.
I would say that the delegation of authority is really here, because that's how every governing body delegates authority to their staff. And, I'll be really interested to see what Mr. Fisher adds, but it makes sense to me to clarify what the delegation authority is in the beginning. But that's where it's really important, is that part about delegation of authority. Cause that's really what you're talking about, is we have all this authority, and it's important to spell out that the city has the rights to do these things, cause that matters too. But we're not the experts, so we're gonna ask our expert to make the recommendations for us.
Yeah, the people who read the code need to know that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, one change, that came out, at the bottom of page 108. We took out personal and personal items and just said items. So no person shall install, place sign, ribbons, balloons, or other items on any traffic control device. This is state federal, but people still do it today. So it needed to be in the code.
I have a question. Is a traffic control item on that, is a light pole considered a traffic control?
Yeah, if it's like the decorative light poles down here, if it's a sign, no parking sign, anything like that. This doesn't pertain to power poles.
Oh,
We let the franchise utilities regulate their stuff. Yeah. Nothing really on 109. Nothing on 110 or 11. Nothing on 112 or 13. Nothing on 114. On 115 at the top. We had, I just clarified authorization is a city right away. Nothing on 116, nothing on 117. Or 118, or 119. Or 120, or 121. 122. 123. 24, 25. 26 or 27. 28 or 29. Nothing on 130 or 131. And that's the end of that chapter 32. Okay. Okay, the meat and taters portion of this. Packet page 184. You've seen it. I'll walk you up front. This was a mixed match of codes. You can tell it has been, I could tell it had been pieced together. They grabbed things from different places and just kind of inserted them in where, and then sewer didn't match up with water and there was nothing in storm and some things conflicted. So what I tried to do is uniformly say the same things through water, sewer, stormwater, because they're all underground utilities. And also we added in a whole bunch of things that were missing specifically in sewer and stormwater to bring you up to current standards with your updated NPDES permit, your TMDL permit. So we're trying to capture all of that in the code. Those are all things that were outlined as need to make these updates. So that's why we did a bunch of them.
For source. Mr. Fisher and I had a conversation about this. Is Minehead considered a utility and is it governed by the Public Utility Commission? Cause I know there's been talk over the years about whether or not internet is a utility or a service.
And I have a note to verify with the city attorney.
So I don't think so, but I might be wrong about that. So,
I mean, we can still leave internet in there because there are other internet providers in town and possibly they are. But I was just curious about Minehead, so whether or not it's covered.
well, cause I remember this whole conversation long ago about there's protections built into a designated utility and the question whether internet is one of those that within that consumer protection requirements. Because there's more policy complications to that. I think the decision was made at the federal level and the answer is no to that. And Minehead would then not be, but it'd be interesting to hear what.
Yeah, they pay a franchise.
They do pay a franchise.
Under our rules, they are considered a franchise utility. And they all reside within either the right of way or when we have it, a public utility easement. Which is where all the franchise companies are supposed to put their utilities.
But our determination is not necessarily a federal or state determination, it's
No.
simply the city's determination that they need to pay us franchise.
And it stops us from having to do a utility section for one group and a utility section for another group. We're basically saying that all of the franchise utilities who are not city utilities, which is water, sewer, stormwater, that those utilities are all in the public utility section. And we're trying to capture all of them because what we don't want to have is they come back and say, well, we're an internet company and we're not listed. So you can't apply the code to us. But the code is covering all the franchise utilities and the internet companies are under a franchise. So I actually have had this happen in the past. Well, we're not listed in the code. Well, you have a franchise. Yeah, we do, but we're not listed in the code. So this back and forth argument, and then attorneys get involved. It's like, if we just list you in here, which is the question to the city attorney. City attorney's gonna tell me, yeah, you can't have that in there, and then we'll take that. Okay, fine. You get to fight that fight later on. Cause I'm not gonna argue.
According to AI, it is not regulated by the Oregon Public Utility Commission.
Yeah.
Because it's a municipal
Oh, yeah.
utility, which means we regulate instead of state.
Okay. So, given that, are there any questions on, page 184 of the packet? 185. I added in some definitions that were missing. And then page 186 is where the bleeding really starts. This basically says we're the owners of the system, and it says that throughout each one of the sections. We have jurisdiction over our systems, responsibility and liability section. How you use the water, restricted use of water, furnishing water, spider connections. Location meters, service outside the city. There were a bunch of things that were in our resolutions that weren't in code, so I tried to clean that up.
Just for clarification, when under section 34-55 ownership of system, it specifically says no person shall connect. But that doesn't mean a person cannot disconnect, correct?
You cannot connect to the system without our permission. You have to go through a formal process to disconnect from the system. You can, and we wouldn't stop somebody from disconnecting. It's actually in another section where if you want to disconnect, there's a formal process you go to.
Okay, maybe I'm not using the right language, so let me ask you again.
Okay,
If there was an emergency at my house and there was a water rupture, I can go out to the street and turn off the water at the street without violating any.
typically, well, so give you 2 examples. In most cases, especially on newer homes, and as they're going through and changing out the meters, they're putting a customer service valve on the backside. That allows you to turn that valve on the back on your house side of the meter, so you can shut it off. Okay, for the ones that haven't been done, they're not allowed to turn it off. They're supposed to call Public Works Operation. If they choose not to do that and they go out and they break that, because it's not like you just turn it, it's a 90-degree turn and it's off. If they go out and do that, the code specifically states you aren't supposed to touch it. Any damages you're responsible for, the cost of the repairs. But as we're going through and changing out the meters, what we're trying to do is add in all of those customer service valves that wasn't in the old standards and now is in our current standards, to give you that ability, so you can control at any time, and then you don't have to call operations to come out and turn off the water.
When were those put into effect? I know the ones you're switching out, but when in new construction were those put in?
When I got here, when I
Just when you
changed the
got
public works standards, yeah, I think it was about a year or so after I got here.
Thank you.
Year and a half.
When will we complete with the meter?
We're on the 3rd year of that, and we have two more years. And hopefully they'll finish all the big meters too, in that the 3-inch, 4-inch, the very large expensive meters too.
So this will not be an issue in approximately 2 years. Because everyone will have that customer service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the goal, is to provide that, and it's not an extra charge, it's being paid for through the existing rates. We're providing that convenience to everybody so that they can go out and turn off their water if they need to. They just want to work on a plumbing fixture inside the house and they're not sure if that valve inside the house works, they have the ability to go out and turn it on. So becomes critical when you have really old plumbing. Okay, so what page were we on?
186.
Okay, anything on 187? $188. $189. $190. $191. 192, it's kind of a non-issue, it's just public works directors throughout most of it. 193,
I have a question on 123.
okay,
So you state water funds shall not be used for other purposes without resolution approved by city council specifying the terms of repayment with the timelines allowed by state law. So I've been told that it's not best practices, it's not legal for us to do that in the first place. So if it's already against the law, why put this in here?
Do you want me to clarify that, Jared?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so water funds, we've talked about the buckets many times, right? Water for water, sewer for sewer. And there are certain instances when water can be moved over, but you have to follow the law. That instance is an interfund loan. This council has determined that we will no longer utilize interfund loans because they were overutilized previously. So to clarify for future administration and future councils that the water funds, it just clarifies again what this council has determined. That it's water for water, sewer for sewer, and we're putting it throughout all of our code.
So if we choose to change that,
It basically says that you can't unilaterally, as staff or council, just say, we want this done. You actually have to do a resolution outlining what you're doing, why you're doing it, how much you're doing it, and specifying the repayment period going into it that complies with state law. That way, you're not creating a situation where the payback isn't in the period that it's supposed to be by state law. You're basically outlining, if we're gonna do this, this is a contract with ourselves and the community by resolution. So it's,
And those are called interfund loans.
yes, interfund. I'll give you an example, a really good example. If it didn't come out of the water fund, but you needed to loan the urban renewal fund to do improvements, you could specify what the payback period is by resolution, which I don't know if did we ever find full resolution? So we're trying to put very specific instructions in place for my replacement, her replacement, 15, 20 years down the road, different counselors. This is how you need to do it properly to be above board and transparent. If and only if you need to. That makes sense. Okay. Any other questions on that page? And I did that in each one of the sections. So that language transfers through the sewer and storm. 194, there's nothing there. 195. $196.
quick question on 196.
Yeah.
The approved backflow prevention device, is that something that for anybody here's time, but is that what was not put into this building, which caused the lower level to flood years and years ago?
I don't know what the cause of the flooding was.
I have a backflow device at my house because I have a sprinkler system.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's different rates of backflow devices. There's a backflow device for irrigation systems. There's double detector check valves for fire systems. There's reduced pressure backflow devices for companies and dental offices that deal with metals and stuff, so stuff can't get back into our system. We also require them if you have a well on your property and you're using it for irrigation, We have a requirement, you have a reduced pressure backflow, because who knows down the road if somebody does a cross connection between those two. And there's a pressure loss in our system due to firefighting or something like that, and the pressure on the house side is higher. You can backfeed potential contaminated water into the drinking water system, so we put that break in there. Each one is specified under the plumbing code and is monitored through the building department. We are required to check and verify, Public Works is, that all backflow devices are tested. We regularly send out letters. They get a couple of letters and then they get the nastygram. And if for any reason they choose not to do that, they get shut off. They also have the opportunity to completely disconnect their irrigation system if they want to. If they don't want to do that anymore, they don't want to mess with the irrigation system. So there's a lot of things. But the reason why I struck out a whole bunch of the stuff that's in here is it's really old language. And I just referenced language that no matter what the changes are, that is the language that we'll use.
And for clarity, as I understand it, Gerald, we have to have those backflow devices in place to keep contaminants from entering our system and contaminating the entire system. Is that correct?
Yes, and it's a regulatory thing that the Oregon Health Authority regularly checks on us. We have to report to them every year how many reports we sent out, how many violations were noticed, how many groups were shut off, or how many customers were shut off. We have to report that every year to OHA. Any other questions on page 196?
Gerald, when I bought my house, I took out the sprinkler system.
Mm-hmm.
I was told that I had to have a certified letter saying that backflow had been removed. Have you changed that wording at all in here? Or?
You either have to have the a certified backflow person go out and do it, and they provide us with the letter.
Right.
The other service that we provide is if the property owner wants to do it, they work with our operations department, specifically our water lead, and they do the work. Our person will go out and physically verify that that work has been done, and then they're taken off the rules for backflows.
But that wording hasn't changed in this. That's still.
I think it just deals with, if you have the system, you have to follow the rules.
Right.
If you go through the process either with the certified letter or through us, because we have a couple of certified testers on there, they can sign off on, yes, it's been physically disconnected and you're out of the system. So you wouldn't get the letters.
I see where it says that it would be discontinued if you didn't pay and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the wording if the customer wants to, that this has to happen. So,
Yeah,
okay.
and a lot of times what will happen is customers will contact operations and they'll say, hey, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And our folks are really good about, okay, so here's the steps that you can take to disconnect the system. We can help you with that. Um, 197.
I have a question on 197.
Okay.
So at the very bottom, section 32-182 says that responsibility for payment for the extension. Do you see any time where it might be something that we could negotiate with the developer, that we wouldn't want to have this language in here, that we will not pay for it if it's something that could potentially benefit the community in the long run if we do provide that extension?
Well, developers through the development process, they're required to automatically extend all of the services to the far end of their property as part of the development review process. So where this one comes into play is I own a house that's on a street, but the water line is up there. I want to connect to city water because my well is failing and I'm in the city limits, so I'm eligible. the cost to extend that line down to my property would be my responsibility. And it has to go to the far end of the property, so if somebody farther down wants to, so you basically kind of de facto become a developer. So the language is set up to say the city is not gonna extend water lines unless we have a capital project, right? Where we would say, we're gonna put this water line in.
That was my question. I didn't know that the capital project would be excluded.
Yeah, if we have a capital project and we put the water line in, then anybody along that route has the ability to connect.
That was my question.
Yeah,
Thank
to the
you.
water line. 198, got completely wiped out. I took out all of the frivolous language, made it simple. 199. $200. $201. $202. I did originally have this at 100 feet, and the Oregon legislature just recently passed a rule that went into effect January 1, that if you're within 300 feet of a line, you have to connect. It's basic procedure. 203. $204.
Do we have many properties within the city of Independence that are still on a septic system and not connected into?
Yes. Yeah,
So-
we have a,
This means within 90 days, they would have to connect to that if we require them to do so?
yes.
And what kind of grace can we give people? Because I can imagine that would be quite expensive if we decide to declare that.
Let me read this real quick. So how I would treat this is if someone came in and said, okay, this is gonna be a big endeavor for me to make this change, I need some more time. Then I would take that to the city manager, it's kind of an appeal above me. And then the city manager could review it and say, okay, so what is your time? Get your information together, how long will it take you to get a contract? To get this stuff, if they say it's gonna take 9 months to get it done, whether it's weather related or whatever, then we can work with them. The goal of this is to have them, when the service is available, that they're disconnected from their septic system. This is a huge push with DEQ, who delegates septic systems individually to the counties to get septic systems decommissioned in city areas where we have a treatment. They're not concerned about people out in the county because they're more spread out. But where you have a publicly owned treatment system, they want those septic systems decommissioned as quickly as possible because it's a water quality issue. We have people who regularly maintain them. We have people who don't regularly maintain them, and the contamination that gets into waterways because of that is what's driving DEQ to say, get those that are inside the city connected to the system and off of a septic system.
And would that be primarily driven by sort of the problem cases? Like if somebody has a septic and they're maintaining it, then I mean, that's probably not the people we're gonna target. But if somebody came in and said, the septic failed, I need a good new one, you'd say,
Yeah, the way the language is written right now is kind of in compliance with DEQ. They want them to disconnect as soon as possible. Doesn't matter if it's functioning, doesn't matter if it has 25 years more life in it. They want them off of the system and connected to the public system.
So here's a question you probably can answer, but I'll throw it out there anyway, just because I was surprised at how much it costs to repair a sidewalk. Do you have any ballpark figure on how much it would cost, like a historic house down in historic Independence? I'm sure it has more septic units than other places in town. Any ballpark figure on how much it would cost to connect to city?
All the ones in the downtown area, they're already connected to the system. The ones that where you typically find in the city, there's some out on Gun Club Road where we don't have sewer extended down to that area at this time. There's some over on 16th, but we don't have a sewer line over there, so they actually have to come over to Gun Club Road. There's some down on Corvallis Road. So if they came into the city and there was they're on a septic system and we extended a sewer system out there, they would have to connect into the city system. And we also have like all of the connection fees and everything. We have a payment program. I think it goes up to 10 years. 10 years.
But we can adjust that if we need to,
Yeah.
longer.
So, and
There's also.
ballpark figure, you think?
Huh?
How much you think it would cost?
It's pinned side by side. If the house is up close and they've got gravity feed out there, it could be $5,000, $10,000.
And that is a very ballpark.
Yeah,
Don't take
if
that.
if your house is farther back and you don't have gravity, they might have to put in a pump that pumps it up to the roadway and into the sewer system. We can, if the council's uncomfortable with the timeline, we can always adjust it. If you wanna change this to say 180 days or whatever, I'm open to it. I was just trying to follow codes in other locations where when the system is there, they want you to connect.
If we extend the system, we wouldn't be giving them guidance that we're extending it in that time period anyway, right?
Yes.
So we have that time period and then an additional 90 days.
Yes.
On top of that, and then they could work out a payment plan or. Right.
They would know about it. We send stuff out to them when locate marks are gonna go out on the ground. Because we had a project where it wasn't even our project, it was franchise utilities, and paint marks were going down on the pavement. And the franchise utility was supposed to notify all the property owners that people lost their lines. Rumors going around about we were tearing up the street, we were doing all kinds of other stuff. So if it's a capital project, we send a notice out to them before any locates go out or any surveys going out that, hey, there's gonna be paint marks, there's gonna be surveyors, we're starting our design for this project and this is what the project is. So they're notified at it early on in the process.
My concern is like in this historic neighborhood, if there was a house that had septic and we just decided to go out and make sure they were all connected, 90 days might be a tight window if that's only the window they have. But if it's if we're extending it, then I think 90 days is appropriate. But but if we're not doing that, then it's not a big deal.
I'm not aware of any houses on septic in the downtown area at all. We have an extensive sewer system through the downtown area everybody's connected to. It's the outlying areas that haven't quite been developed yet, like Gun Club Road, 16, core levels for those kind of areas.
Thank you for the clarification.
Page 205. Page 206.
Fisher, what is a prohibited connection? Like, is it like a unapproved, simple unapproved connection to the system? Is it like someone just went out there and like duct taped pipe to the system? Like, what is it? What does that look like? And how often is that like a thing to happen?
It happens. It doesn't happen as frequently anymore because a lot of agencies have really cracked down on it. It's a connection to, and these are kind of things that typically happen on a Saturday or Sunday when there's no city staff working. They go out, they dig in, they tap into a sewer line or a storm line. A lot of times it's a storm line. And we don't know anything about it until we do a video inspection or try to clean the line, and they've cheesed together some connection. And so there's a process that they have to go through as far as right-of-way permits, following our public works standards for construction, making sure they used to concrete pipes, they used to take a hammer to them, break them out and stuff a pipe in there and concrete around them. We don't allow that anymore. They're cored and there's an actual fitting that goes around it, the manufactured fitting, so that you don't have leaks into the system. And it's inspected. Other things, I've actually run into this. Somebody connected a sewer line to the storm system. Somebody connects their storm downspouts to the sewer system, and now you have an extensive I&I problem that goes to the treatment plant, and you have to treat that water. So this is kind of the regulation saying, you don't get to do this, you gotta follow the standards, you gotta take out permits, and it will get inspected, so we know it's done right.
Thank you.
Yeah. 207. $208. $209. $210.
Question on 10, section 34.239, businesses are required to accurately report chemical discharges. Is that sort of on the honor system? Are there certain businesses that have different reporting mechanisms?
There are federally listed businesses that we track and monitor, especially industrial users. We send out at least once during our NPDES permit cycle, which is a 5-year cycle. We're required to send out an industrial users survey where we send it to the property and say, do you use any of these chemicals or any of these things? A lot of times they come back and say, no, we don't use any of that stuff. And that goes into a big report that goes to DEQ. Where we run into issues and why this code is in here is if you have a business that sets up, and I'll give you a really good example. The wraps on cars, those plastic wraps, extremely toxic materials. And We actually had a company that subleased and came in, and then when they were all done, they were washing their floors down into the drains and into the sewer system. And the toxic material that they used can kill a lagoon system, absolutely destroy it. So they're required to, and this is part of our, when businesses come in or change of use comes in, that's our trigger to look at, okay, what are you using? We had the creamery pay that. We wanted to know what they were using, what cleaning materials they were using, the frequency of their discharges, what the temperature of their discharges was. There was a whole list. Our wastewater operator, who is in charge of maintaining that permit with DEQ for the wastewater treatment plant, actually went out and met with them, looked at their process and made sure that everything was okay. So we have checks and balances, but this is kind of the catch-all net. If somebody comes in, doesn't report, and then we have the regulatory authority to go and say, you can't do this.
Again, quick follow-up.
Yep.
Are those, thank you, Mayor, are those fines set at the state level? So like if you went in and the dairy or the creamery or whatever was discharging, caused damage, are those fines because it's a DEQ permit set at the state level, or do we have authority to hear
So
those fines?
we have written in the code that if you do, I can't remember what section is in here, but what it says is if you do a discharge into our system that harms our plant and we have DEQ violations, you're on the hook for that there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
So like we do the due diligence, we do our thing, make sure that they're following the rules, when they break the rules, then they're on the hook to.
They're on the hook. Yeah. It's not in business's interest to kill the wastewater treatment. That's not good. That's not a good PR move. So, page 211. Two 12. To 13. To 14. The bottom of page 214 and all of 215 is the addition of a whole bunch of definitions that weren't in there before, really needed to be in there. Same thing with 216 and part of 217.
This is a kind of a random question, but do we have to deal with any PFAS during that, is that for us to deal with?
Well, we have to do testing on our water wells periodically. And I think was the last time we were 1/600th away from, or we were, I can't remember, it's measured in the parts per
Okay.
billions or something like that, and we weren't anywhere near. Yeah.
We were like tiny,
Yeah.
tiny.
It's not better than. Like, more with the aviation, like large aviation, not, I'm not saying our general aviation airport, but large aviation airports, it's a big thing.
They're monitoring it everywhere, they're monitoring it, in mandatory monitoring in drinking water systems, from source water. And there are some larger agencies that DEQ is asking for, the wastewater. But they're also being asked to test for viruses and stuff.
Yeah.
Back when the
Yeah.
pandemic, they were trying to see, well, how prevalent is it?
Yeah.
And stuff, it was kind of a, can we even detect this?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So any questions on 217? And now 218. Stormwater was a very, very small section and, I had to do a lot of work to get it caught up and matched up with the other ones, but this really gets you to where you need to be. And we wanted to get this done before the stormwater, master plan was done too.
Mayor, I do have a question about stormwater building, because in the regulations that you wrote, Mr. Fisher, it basically says if to connect the builder or the owner bears all responsibility, costs, and something happens, right?
Right.
So I'm assuming when a builder comes in and connects to our stormwater system, that it's inspected and it's approved. So what you're saying is after said approval, if they make any changes, the owner is
Yes,
responsible for anything first, because we're assuming when we go and approve the permit or approve the build and say this is ready for living. We're good, and the construction person's like, okay, I've done what I need to do, transfers it to the owner messes with anything. That's what you're really talking about.
it's on, yeah. We do inspections on the public part of the system. The building department does inspections on the private part because they're under the uniform building code, the
Right.
plumbing code for that. Once all of the improvements are done and they get signed off from Public Works and the building department, they need that to get their occupancy. If any future owner does anything that compromises the system or compromises the discharge that comes into ours, then it gives us the ability to deal with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Page 219. Page 220. And down at the bottom of page 220, that it talks about discharges, the different kinds of discharges, and these are very common and regulated kind of things, type systems. Page 221. Page 222. This is a section 34,365 that you really needed to have in your code with DEQ. Contractors are required to do 1200C permits, but they don't end when Public Works is done with the approval of the development. It continues with home construction too. Until the last home is built and all the landscaping is in, they're under that 1200C permit. 223. Two 24. Two 25. Two 26. Two 27. There's nothing on 228, so 229. $230. Nothing on 231 or 232. So 233.
Hey, Gerald,
Yeah,
so it's probably semantics, but, section 34.3.7. B, I think you, yeah. you're missing-
34, which one?
Yeah, 34-37, 373. You're missing a period at the end of that sentence, so. What's that like?
373, okay, yeah, stormwater utility fee. And what's the question?
You're just missing a period there.
The same period at the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Catch.
I know.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, so we were, we were on 230, right? 233, thank you. So I took out 411. Because it doesn't apply anymore. And then system development charges. One minor change to that. 234. The language cleanup. $235. That was a law language cleanup.
Lawyers.
236 is a continuation of that. 237. E, Anna, would you like to talk about that?
Does anyone have any questions on that?
Seems, that's logical.
That's state law, right?
That is actually an allowance. We are what is considered a childcare desert. And so that is an allowance for 10 years to allow childcare to come in. And then we will reassess that for 10 years. But it is modeled counseling on something similar, yes.
And then nothing on 238, and the one thing that was missing was 239 penalty.
We
Got a reference to penalty, like the other sections do. It was just, it was missing.
think
That's it. In a nutshell.
I learned more than I ever thought I would learn about sewer, water. Thank you.
Pretty interesting stuff, huh?
I'm a nerd, so yes.
So going forward, I will, I'll do a tweak to that, language, for the roadways. And I'll just strip those 3 sections out. And I'll get those to Mario so you can see my massaging of that language. And then really what I'm looking for individually from each one of the counselors is your thoughts, thumbs up, thumbs down, and we'll run that language through the city attorney.
It was clear that there were several sections that needed to align with state federal law.
Yeah, And there was a lot of references to stuff that doesn't exist anymore, so what I
Like
tried.
the city marshal.
Yeah, what I tried to do is I tried to take out very specific references for like a particular part or something like that and just reference the main code, the statute or the OAR. And if those changes, it automatically changes.
I don't think we have anything else for agenda.
Thank you, council.
So we are adjourned.
This
Yes,
is a very,
very
very heavy meeting and we appreciate your time.